Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Romeo and Juliet, and today we get to hear some very, very famous words from Romeo. Like, I'm sure that you've heard these words, if not in the context of an actual production of Romeo and Juliet, then in one of those high school teen angst movies where they're doing a play within the movie and the two leads in the movie end up playing Romeo and Juliet and you see a snippet of a rehearsal. This is the scene that they're rehearsing. Like, this is always the scene that they're rehearsing, unless, by the end of the movie they've gotten to Act 5 in Romeo and Juliet, but this is always like at the start of that movie, the start of the rehearsal process. This is the bit that you see. So I'm sure that you have heard at least some of these words before, unless this is your first exposure to anything, in which case I empathize. And also, welcome to Shakesyear. Thanks for finding me. But anyway, so we're in Act 2, Scene 2, which comes after the party that Romeo and his friends crashed at the Capulets' house, whereat he saw Juliet for the first time and instantly forgot about Rosalind, with whom he was so in love because, such is the fickle nature of male romance. And Juliet fell in love with him too, and then they find out that they're each other's enemies, and then the party ends and everybody is asked to leave, but Romeo can't quite bring himself to leave yet, so he walks out of the house and then jumps over the orchard wall. So he's hanging out in the backyard now, and Mercutio and Benvolio go looking for him there. And that was Act 2, Scene 1. They're trying to they're trying to find him and just be like, come on, man, it's time to go home. Come with us. But Romeo doesn't want to leave yet, so he's hiding in a bush, and he hears them talking some crap about Romeo and his, bemoaning his state of being in love, all of that sort of thing. I don't think they know yet that he's in love with Juliet. I think that they still think that he's in love with Rosalind, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. It doesn't really matter. The point is, he doesn't go with them when they say it's time to go, and they get bored of waiting for him, so they leave, and that's the end of Act 2, Scene 1. So Romeo kicks off Act 2, Scene 2 by saying, he justs at scars that never felt a wound. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. She speaks, yet she says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses. I will answer it. I am too bold. 'Tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars, as daylight doth a lamp. Her eye in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. So he's waxing poetic because he sees her in her bedroom window. And everybody always puts this on a balcony, but there's nothing really in the folio that says that it has to be a balcony. And I think, I could be wrong about this, but I think that the word balcony and the concept of balconies didn't really become a thing until later. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, so he starts off by dismissing Benvolio and Mercutio, saying they don't even know what they're talking about because they've never been in love. And then he sees a light come on in the house, and he's like, oh, that has to be Juliet, because she must be the sun rising in the east. She is so bright and so beautiful. And he, tells her to, come on out. It's daybreak. It's lovely. And nobody likes the moon anyway because it makes everything dark and gloomy. And then she actually comes out and he's like, oh wow, isn't she gorgeous? And she maybe sighs or makes some little noises, stuff like that, and he can't hear, and he stops himself from actually talking to her yet because he's like, she doesn't know that I'm here, she's not actually talking to me, that kind of a thing. And then he waxes poetic about how bright her eyes are, and that if, it must have been a couple of stars. It's that whole, did it hurt when you fell from heaven thing. A couple of stars must have asked her eyes to take their place in the heavens for a little while because they're so bright, so they must have switched places, and she's blinding the whole world with her beauty because she's so lovely. And then she does something like this, and he's like, oh, I wish that I could be a glove so that I could be touching that cheek that she's touching. So obviously this was not a pandemic world and people were allowed to touch their faces. But anyway, he's very excited to see her and to get to bask in her beauty. And then she does actually speak. She sort of sighs, and he's like, oh my goodness, do I talk now? Do I talk now or what? But then he waits just a little bit longer to see what she might actually have to say before he decides to speak to her. And tomorrow we'll get to hear some very famous words from her as well. If you already know them, put them in the chat. I want to see who knows this scene already. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow when we get to hear how Juliet feels about this whole encounter and this whole situation. I'll see you then for that. Mwah.